They pushed my daughter down the stairs and called it an accident. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. I'm not just a mother, I'm a storm they'll never escape. If you're hearing my story, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Let's see how far this revenge reaches. My name is Margaret Ann, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 72 years old, born and raised in Kansas, and I thought I'd seen every kind of cruelty life could throw at me. I was wrong. The day it all began, the rain was pounding so hard it felt like the sky wanted to drown the city. I was stirring a pot of stew in my small kitchen, thinking about the dinner I'd share later with my daughter Clara and her husband Jason. She'd promised to stop by if he wasn't working late again. I didn't realize then how much those words would come to haunt us. The phone rang. Unknown number. St. Luke's Hospital. My chest tightened. Mrs. Margaret Ann, your daughter Clara has been brought to the ER. Please come immediately. The knife slipped from my hand. I grabbed my keys, ran through the rain, and nearly fell on the porch. The drive took 15 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. When I burst through the hospital doors, dripping wet, a nurse rushed me down the hall. And then I saw her. Clara, my sweet girl. Lying on a gurney, her hair sticky with blood. Her face ghostly pale. Clara! I screamed, but they were already wheeling her into surgery. Hours blurred together. The smell of antiseptic. The cold plastic chairs. The sound of the clock ticking like a hammer. Finally, Dr. Evans emerged, face grave. She suffered a severe head injury and a fractured arm. It's a miracle she survived the fall from the top of the staircase. Who brought her here? I asked. Her husband. He signed the papers and left. Jason. When they let me see her in intensive care, Clara was pale and fragile, surrounded by tubes and machines. She squeezed my hand weakly and whispered through cracked lips, Mom, he cheated on me, with his sister-in-law, in our house. I walked in. He pushed me. Down the stairs. Then he laughed. My breath caught. They told me they'll say I fell by myself, she added, terrified. I pressed my forehead to hers. I promise you, Clara, I'll get you justice. Outside her room I saw him. Jason. In his perfect black suit, sipping coffee like nothing happened. Talking on the phone, calm, collected. My hands curled into fists. Nobody hurts my daughter and walks away like that. I remembered how it all started months ago. Their anniversary dinner, Jason, charming everyone, talking about his new promotion at the bank, complaining about late meetings. Clara's smile back then was already dimmer, her spark fading. He kept flipping his phone over whenever it lit up. I had a bad feeling then, but I pushed it away. I didn't want to be the overprotective mom. Then came the phone call. Clara accidentally answered, a woman's voice. I left my bracelet on your bed. Don't let her see it. Clara's face had gone white. Jason showed up with flowers the next day and explained it away with a slick lie about his sister-in-law, Chloe, joking around. I should have known better. Weeks later, Clara messaged me, Mom, I found a woman's jacket in the closet. I'm scared. Hours later, she was in the hospital, broken and bleeding. That night, I sat in my kitchen replaying every sign I'd ignored, the perfume that wasn't Clara's, the late nights, the lies, the look in his eyes. And I swore to myself, I may be old, but I am not powerless. The next morning, when I walked into the hospital lobby with a thermos of coffee, Jason was already there, pretending to be the worried husband. His crocodile tears didn't fool me. His hands were unmarked. No scratches from catching her fall. His mother, Patricia, swept in wearing pearls and silk, whispering, Poor Jason, your daughter is so clumsy. Clumsy. I bit down my rage so hard I tasted blood. Later that morning, 2 detectives came. They spoke to Jason first. 10 minutes later, one of them looked me in the eye and said, Ma'am, it was an accident. Accident. Jason thanked them like they'd just done him a favor. But then something happened he didn't expect. Mrs. Linda, Clara's neighbor, called me. She'd seen Chloe's car parked in front of the house that afternoon. Heard a scream, a thud. Then Jason's car speeding off. I watched him later in the hospital hallway whispering into his phone, It's okay. Everything's under control. Don't come, Chloe. I quietly snapped a picture. He thought age made me blind. He had no idea. 3 days later, while Jason was on a business trip, I took Clara's house key, went inside, and started searching. The smell hit me: first cheap perfume and wine. 2 half-empty glasses, one with lipstick. Blood on the floor by the staircase. Glass shards glittering like accusations. In their bedroom, a hotel bill in Jason and Chloe's names. A bottle of Chloe's signature perfume. A red-stained towel in the washer. I documented everything. Photos. Bagged items. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with the cold precision of a woman who'd made up her mind. Then luck or fate stepped in. Mr. Thompson, the retired cop next door, saw me. I told him everything. He showed me his security footage. At 1:12 p.m., Chloe hurried out of Clara's house, coat half-buttoned, looking both ways like a thief. 5 minutes later, Jason carried Clara out. He copied the footage to a USB and put his hand on mine. Jason isn't innocent. Don't let this go. That night, I knelt in the dim light of St. Sech, Mary's Church. Rain tapped the stained glass like a heartbeat. I didn't ask God to punish them. I asked for strength. When I stepped outside, soaked to the bone, a message appeared on my phone. Stop digging, for your own good. I smiled. They had just declared war. I didn't sleep that night. I brewed coffee, spread photos and notes across my kitchen table, and became the kind of woman people underestimate until it's too late. I'm Eleonora May, but folks call me Ellie, and I wasn't going to let anyone rewrite my daughter's life as an accident. By dawn, I'd listed everything we had: the blood by the stairs, the lipstick on the wine glass, the hotel bill with Jason and Chloe side by side like a confession, and the neighbor's memory of a scream, a thud, and a getaway car. I printed stills from the footage Mr. Thompson had lent me, the one that caught Chloe hustling out of Clara's house with her coat crooked and her heels in her hand. Then I tucked a copy of everything into a metal tin and hid it where only I'd find it. If they came for me, the truth would still breathe. Ski-chi-chi-ti. Late morning, I drove to St. Mary's, not to beg for vengeance but to steady my hands. Candles flickered. Stained glass glowed. I whispered one request. Give me the nerve to stand up straight when the lying starts. I'd just stepped back into the damp daylight when a message hit my phone. Stop digging, for your own good. I stared at it until the screen dimmed and smiled to myself. They were afraid. Good, ski car P. At the parish cafe, a friend slid a card across my table. Private investigator, reliable, I called. Carl Reynolds answered with a clipped baritone and no nonsense. Half an hour later, he sat across from me, military haircut, clear eyes, the look of a man who'd already counted exits. I handed him the USB, the hotel bill, and a timeline I'd drawn with careful, tidy handwriting. You want locations verified, routines mapped, and anything that ties the two of them together outside the house? He asked. Yes, and I want proof that doesn't disappear when they start crying. 3 days, he said. You'll have something usable. He was wrong. It took him 2. That evening, he texted me a string of photos: Chloe at Jason's townhouse on Tuesday and Friday afternoons, staying over an hour, slipping out with a wine bottle and a man's shirt half on her shoulders. In one shot, she glances back at the door, fear sharpening her profile. I filed every image, labeled every timestamp, and felt my spine lock into place. Ski-chi-chi-ti, Jason called that same night syrupy. Ellie, I stopped by the hospital. Clara was sleeping. Tell her I love her. I'm doing everything I can. Of course, I said softly, because softness is a blanket you can pull away at just the right time. Then I drove to his townhouse. I parked down the block, bought a bouquet of lilies from a street cart, and pressed my phone to record before I knocked. He opened the door in a crisp shirt and the kind of smile you rehearse in mirrors. Ellie. What a surprise. I'm just here for a few of Clara's things, I said, stepping past him like I owned the deed. The air inside was scrubbed with chemical citrus, a scent people use when they're afraid of what the nose might learn. On the coffee table, a half-drunk glass of red with a lipstick rim like a crescent wound. On the sofa, a thread of long brown hair shimmering in the lamplight. In the bedroom, a silk scarf tossed over a chair, and that sweet counterfeit vanilla perfume Chloe wore like armor. "Whose scarf?" I asked, touching it with 2 fingers. "My mother's," he lied quickly, the way practiced liars always do, fast, flat, and forward. I set the lilies down and tilted my head. "Clara told me she heard a woman's voice before she fell. Did anyone come by that day?" "No." His jaw ticked. "She's been anxious. Stress? Sleeping pills? It happens." I walked back to the living room and plucked my phone from the bouquet. I pressed play. Carl's voice filled the townhouse, clean and clinical. Observation: subject Chloe enters Jason's residence at 5:12 p.m. Exits 6:45 p.m. carrying wine. A hinge breathed somewhere behind us. I turned. Chloe stood in the kitchen doorway, holding a glass, bare legs under an oversized white shirt, buttons uneven. For a second she tried to smile like a soap commercial, then her hand trembled and the glass pitched to the tile, shattering. The red spread wide, a nervous halo. "Good afternoon, Chloe," I said, gentle as fresh snow. "Mrs. Ellie, I came to comfort Jason. He's devastated." "Comfort," I repeated, tasting the word. "Is that what we're calling it?" Jason stepped between us, voice tightening. "What are you doing, Ellie?" "Documenting," I said, and hit play again. Now it was Jason's voice from the hospital hallway, smaller from distance but unmistakable. "Don't come, Chloe." "She's starting to suspect." He went pale like chalk. Chloe sat down hard, one hand over her mouth. I bent, picked up a shard of glass and set it upright on the table, a tiny bright blade. "This is what truth looks like when it's broken," I told them. "It still cuts." Skychirpy. I left them there in that silence, a nest of lies blown open by a plain old woman with steady hands. In the car, I saved the fresh audio under a new name, The Whole Truth, and drove to the hospital. When Clara woke, I brushed hair from her forehead and told her only what she needed. "I'm tying the knots. Rest." The next day, Detective Olson, the one who'd once called it an accident, phoned to say they'd found no criminal indicators yet, but were monitoring. His tone made it clear whom he'd decided was respectable. I thanked him kindly and hung up. When a door won't open, you don't beg it. You pick a better lock. I invited Patricia to dinner for Friday. "Family only," I said. "We'll pray for Clara together." She hesitated, then chirped. "We'll be there. She'd bring Chloe too," she added, to lift spirits. Of course she would. She thought proximity was power. I set the table for truth instead. All day Friday I cooked like I was laying bricks, mole that simmered slow and dark, tamales folded with careful fingers, a salad bright enough to light its own way. I ironed a lace tablecloth I'd been saving for good news. In the center, I placed a small statue of the Virgin and a simple taper candle. Not a shrine, just a witness. In the afternoon I met Mr. Thompson by the gate and took back the USB. He nodded when I asked if he'd drop by at 7, and his old cop eyes scanned the street like a weather report. "You sure?" he asked. "I'm old," I told him. "Not fragile." At 6 on the dot, a black sedan slid to the curb. Jason came in stiff and overdressed, Patricia gleaming with pearls and perfume, and Chloe in white like she was daring the tablecloth to outstare her. I smiled, thanked them for coming, and poured them wine with a steady hand. Clara listened from the bedroom, the door cracked, her crutch leaning against the frame like a sentinel. "Before we eat," I said, "I want to share a little something the neighbors sent, a prayer for clarity." I clicked the TV on and slid the USB into the port. The living room dimmed, and there it was, the timestamp, the curb, Chloe's SUV, and Chloe herself hurrying from Clara's door with her shoes in one hand, hair wild and eyes sharp with flight. The room held its breath. Patricia's pearls stopped breathing with her. "That's her car," she whispered to Chloe. "I just stopped by," Chloe murmured. to check on. The footage froze on her face. I pressed a button. Jason's hallway whisper filled my home again. Don't come, Chloe. She's starting to suspect. Jason surged to his feet, knocking his chair back an inch. You recorded me without. I didn't record you, I said. The hospital walls did. I only paid attention. Chloe's glass tipped, a scarlet bloom bleeding into the lace like a warning flare. Patricia pressed her fingers to her temple, pearls rattling faintly as her hand shook. A soft sound came from the hallway. Clara stepped forward, pale but steady, fingers wrapped around her crutch. Do you remember what you said when you shoved me? She asked Jason quietly. You said you shouldn't have come back so soon. He swallowed, lips parting, eyes flitting between the door and the screen like a man deciding whether to run or pretend. The front latch clicked. Mr. Thompson stepped in, followed by two uniformed officers who had the weary faces of men who know when they've been steered wrong. One of them, Olson, looked at the TV, then at the wine spreading over my table, then at my daughter's bandages. Something hard settled behind his eyes. We'll need everyone's statements, he said. And that drive. I handed him the USB and the hotel bill in a neat stack. Chloe inhaled sharply when she saw the paper, and Jason flinched as though the room itself had shouted. The officers exchanged a look and moved closer. I think dessert can wait, I said. Outside, the first threads of rain began to stitch the evening together. Inside, the thin candle burned without wavering. Part 3 would not be dessert. It would be the plate the liars would finally have to eat from. When they asked me if I wanted the room cleared, I shook my head. No, I said. Let everyone hear so there's no more pretending. Patricia dabbed at the wine but only spread the stain. Chloe stared at her own hands as if they might tell her what to do next. Jason watched the door the way a fox watches a trap. Calculated, too late. Ellie, Detective Olson said quietly, anything else we should know before we proceed? I looked at the table I'd set, food made with patience, the kind my mother taught me to keep a family alive through lean years, a candle burning in a room that had seen too many storms, and I nodded. Yes, I said. You missed something the first time. He lifted his pen. You missed a mother, I told him. And then I opened my folder. The room hushed. The rain deepened. Somewhere down the block, a clock began to chime the hour, and I thought, let the counting begin. Rain was falling again that night, a soft drizzle tapping the roof like the world itself was holding its breath. Inside my house, the table still bore the stain from spilled wine, the USB drive was gone with the detectives, and Jason sat pale in handcuffs while the flashing red and blue lights painted the walls like judgment. Neighbors gathered at the gate, whispering. Patricia tried to shield her face from cameras, crying, "This is just a family misunderstanding." But her voice trembled with the weight of the truth she'd tried to hide. Chloe slumped into a chair, white dress wrinkled, mascara bleeding, hands shaking as if reality had just caught up to her. I didn't look away. Detective Olson approached, his earlier skepticism wiped clean. He held the hotel bill, Carl's photos, and the footage. Everything I'd pieced together as carefully as a quilt. This is enough, he said simply. They led Jason out first. His polished shoes splashed in puddles like tiny admissions of guilt. Chloe followed, flanked by officers. As the patrol car doors shut, the sirens wailed and faded into the night. I stood in the doorway, rain misting my face, and for the first time in weeks, I exhaled without shaking. Sketchy TT inside. Clara leaned against the doorframe on her crutch. She didn't cry. She just whispered, "It's over, Mom." "Not over," I said softly, "but justice has started walking." The next morning, the headlines screamed what our hearts already knew: bank director arrested for assaulting wife, mistress identified as sister-in-law. Jason's perfect smile was gone, replaced by the wide-eyed stare of a man who finally met consequences. Carl called later. Chloe's talking. She admitted everything. Jason's facing 12 years minimum. She's getting clemency for cooperating. I didn't gloat. I brewed coffee, opened the window, and listened to the world breathe. Clara took her first steps with the nurse that afternoon, her face determined. When she stumbled, I caught her, not to hold her up forever but to remind her she wasn't alone. Sometimes, I told her, even grown women have to learn to walk again. Weeks passed. Clara returned home. The rain ended, bougainvillea bloomed across the roofs, and I moved into her guest room to help with her rehab. She reopened her art studio for children with disabilities. Laughter filled the walls again where fear once lived. One morning, while watering white roses in the front yard, the radio crackled. Former bank director Jason Caldwell sentenced to 12 years in prison. I turned off the dial and sat quietly, feeling peace bloom like those roses. Not triumph peace. She. A letter arrived later with no return address. Inside, a single photo of Chloe, hair tied back, working at a tailor's shop in another town. On the back, a note: I'm trying to redeem my mistakes. Thank you for not destroying me completely. I burned it over the kitchen sink. I didn't need her apology. Some things don't deserve space on a shelf. That evening, fireworks exploded over town. Clara called me outside. We watched the bursts light the sky, her hand warm in mine. For the first time, the sound didn't remind me of sirens. It sounded like freedom. I opened my diary that night. Day 120, after the fall. The rain has stopped. Justice has done its work. Clara sleeps in peace. I closed the book and stepped onto the porch. A soft breeze carried the scent of roses. Somewhere in the distance, church bells chimed 9 times. I touched my old wooden rosary and whispered, "No one touches my daughter and sleeps peacefully afterward." Because in the end, revenge wasn't about rage. It was about a mother refusing to let the truth drown in silence. If you felt every heartbeat of this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it. I want to know in the comments, how far did this story reach? And tell me, if you were in my shoes, would you have stayed silent or fought back? Your voice might be the light another mother needs.